It is Thursday morning, 11:42 am, and you are sitting in a window seat at 35,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean. You are watching a movie on the seatback screen, feeling the gentle hum of the jet engines that keeps you suspended in the air. Suddenly the music stops, the screen goes black, and the fasten seatbelt sign chimes with an aggressive, repeated urgency. The pilot's voice comes over the intercom, but it is not the calm, reassuring voice you are used to hearing from the cockpit. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, we have received an immediate directive from the Federal Aviation Administration to land at the nearest airport." You look out the window and see the plane bank sharply, the wing dipping toward the ocean as the engines throttle back for a rapid descent. You don't know it yet, but this is the last time you or anyone else will ever be this high above the surface of the Earth. This is not a temporary delay. This is the beginning of the forever grounded scenario, where global aviation ceases to exist instantly. In this simulation, we explore a world where the laws of physics or a catastrophic cyber event render powered flight impossible. We are not talking about a week-long volcano ash cloud. We are talking about the permanent end of the aero era. To understand the scale of this, realize that at any given moment there are 10,000 planes carrying 1.2 million people in the sky. When the order is given, the sky must be cleared, creating the most dangerous traffic jam in human history within minutes. Let's enter this collapse through the eyes of Sarah, the operations director at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International, the busiest airport in the world. Usually her job is a symphony of controlled chaos, managing a takeoff or landing every 45 seconds on 5 parallel runways. But at 12:00 p.m., the radar screen turns into a solid wall of red dots as hundreds of aircraft converge on her airport simultaneously. Planes are landing on taxiways, on grass medians, and dangerously close to each other as fuel reserves run critically low. By 2:00 p.m., the runways are turned into parking lots, with aluminum wings overlapping like a chaotic game of Tetris. Sarah looks out of the control tower window and sees a sea of metal stretching to the horizon, silent and motionless. Inside the terminals, the situation deteriorates rapidly as 300,000 stranded passengers realize they are not going home. The food courts run out of supplies in 2 hours, and the restrooms become unusable zones of filth and despair. By day 1, the immediate crisis is not about travel. It is about the time-critical cargo that keeps people alive. We think of planes as moving tourists, but the belly of every passenger jet is filled with urgent medical supplies and mail. Sarah receives a frantic call from a transplant coordinator. A human heart is sitting on a plane that just landed in Memphis. The recipient is in Miami, and the heart has a shelf life of 4 hours. Without a plane, the heart will expire, and the patient will die. Across the country, the organ network collapses instantly because kidneys and livers cannot travel by truck across states in time. Surgeons are forced to cancel thousands of life-saving operations, and the waiting list for organs becomes a death row. By day 3, the concept of global just-in-time logistics faces a reality check that bankrupts entire industries. You go to a florist to buy roses for an anniversary, but the shop is empty and smells of decaying plant matter. Those roses were cut in Colombia yesterday and were supposed to be flown to Miami overnight to reach your local store. Without air cargo, the global flower industry worth billions turns into compost in 72 hours, wiping out economies in South America. But the real panic sets in at the grocery store, specifically in the fresh seafood and exotic fruit aisles. The salmon from Alaska, the pineapples from Hawaii, and the fresh berries from Chile disappear from the shelves forever. We have forgotten that eating fresh sushi in Kansas is a logistical miracle that requires jet fuel and speed. Now, if you want to eat lobster, you have to drive to Maine. If you want an orange, you have to drive to Florida. By day 7, the isolation of island nations and remote territories turns into a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe. Places like Hawaii, Puerto Rico, and Guam import 90% of their food and medical supplies by air and sea. While ships can bring heavy goods, the urgent medical isotopes used for cancer treatment have a half-life of only a few days. They are made in nuclear reactors in Europe and flown globally. Without planes, cancer treatment in Hawaii stops completely. The tourism industry, which makes up 10% of global GDP, simply evaporates into thin air, taking millions of jobs with it. Hotels in Las Vegas, resorts in the Maldives, and safari parks in Kenya go from 100% occupancy to zero in a week. Sarah is now managing a refugee camp in the Atlanta terminal, as thousands of international passengers have nowhere to go. They cannot fly back to Europe or Asia, and there are not enough buses or trains to move them across the ocean. By month 1, the corporate world realizes that the era of the global business meeting is officially over. Consultants, executives, and salespeople who lived their lives in business class are grounded, their careers rendered obsolete. Zoom and Teams become the only way to conduct international business, but the lack of face-to-face trust erodes deals. Multinational corporations begin to break apart into regional franchises because they can no longer manage global operations effectively. The aircraft manufacturing giants, Boeing and Airbus, declare bankruptcy, triggering the largest industrial collapse in history. Factories in Seattle and Toulouse shut down, laying off hundreds of thousands of highly skilled engineers and mechanics. The ripple effect hits the oil industry hard, as jet fuel accounts for a massive percentage of global oil consumption. Refineries have to shut down because their storage tanks are full of useless jet fuel that no one can burn. By month 3, the geopolitical map begins to change as countries realize they can no longer project power quickly. The U.S. military, which relies on Air Force transports to move troops and tanks anywhere in 24 hours, is now slow. An aircraft carrier is still powerful, but it cannot be resupplied with spare parts or fresh personnel without carrier onboard delivery planes. Wars become local, slow, and grinding, reverting to the speed of World War I, rail, and sea mobilization. Sarah has lost her job at the airport, because an airport without planes is just a very expensive shopping mall with no customers. She watches as the idle aircraft on the tarmac begin to rust, their tires going flat, birds building nests in the engines. By month 6, the psychological impact of the big world sets in for the average person. For the last 50 years, the world felt small. You could be in Tokyo tomorrow for the price of a television. Now the world is enormous again. Tokyo might as well be on the moon if you live in New York. Visiting family on the other side of the country becomes a journey of days, not hours, requiring planning and endurance. The Grand Tour returns. Travel becomes a luxury for the rich who can afford the time to take ocean liners or trains. The middle class is confined to a radius of about 500 miles, the distance you can drive in a day. High-speed rail projects, which were debated for decades, suddenly become the most urgent national priority. The government shifts trillions of dollars from aviation subsidies to building magnetic levitation tracks across the continent. But building tracks takes years, and right now, the highways are choked with the traffic of a nation forced to drive. The great American road trip is no longer a vacation. It is the only way to move, and the infrastructure is crumbling under the weight. By year 1, the atmosphere of the planet begins to change in measurable and visible ways. Without the contrails, the white clouds left by jet engines, the sky is a deeper, clearer blue during the day. Scientists notice a sudden shift in daily temperatures because contrails used to trap heat at night and reflect sun during the day. The air quality around major cities improves drastically, but the silence is what people notice the most. You never realized how loud the modern world was until the roar of the jet engine was removed from the background. You can hear birds in the city, you can hear the wind. The acoustic ceiling of civilization has been lifted. The mail system has reverted to trucks and trains, meaning a letter from London to New York takes 2 weeks by ship. The instant gratification of next-day delivery is a myth from the past that we tell our children about. Sarah finds work in the booming passenger rail industry, which is hiring faster than it can train people. Train stations are the new cathedrals of commerce, bustling with the energy that airports used to have. But there is a sadness in the culture, a feeling of being trapped on the surface, gravity claiming its victory. We looked up at the stars and thought we were destined to leave. Now we look at the horizon and feel the distance. The brain drain hits remote universities and research centers that relied on flying in the best minds for conferences. Science slows down because collaboration becomes harder. Ideas don't cross-pollinate as fast as they used to. Epidemics, however, also slow down. A virus that starts in Asia takes months to reach America, not hours. The natural quarantine of distance returns, making global pandemics much easier to contain and manage. By year 5, a generation of children is growing up who have never seen the curve of the Earth from a window. They look at the rusting carcasses of 747s in the desert boneyards like we look at the skeletons of dinosaurs. They can't believe that we used to sit in metal tubes and burn liquefied dinosaurs to shoot ourselves across the sky. It seems magical, reckless, and impossible to them, a golden age of excess that burned itself out. We gained a cleaner sky and a slower life, but we lost the perspective that comes from looking down. We lost the understanding that borders are invisible from 30,000 feet, and that the world is one single system. Now borders are hard lines on a map, guarded by soldiers, separated by weeks of travel. We are more local, more tribal, and less connected to the humanity on the other side of the ocean. Sarah stands on the roof of the old control tower, which is now a museum of the flight era. She looks at the empty sky waiting for a blinking light. A contrail, anything to show that we are still trying, but the sky is empty, blue, and indifferent to the species that clipped its own wings. We are grounded, not by gravity, but by the collapse of the complex systems we failed to maintain. We are back to being earthbound creatures, looking up, dreaming of the time when we were gods. The silence of the sky is peaceful, but it is also the sound of a civilization that has stopped moving forward. So, the next time you are squeezed into a middle seat, complaining about the legroom and the bad coffee, look out the window at the clouds and realize that you are participating in a miracle. You are defying nature, time, and distance in a way that 99% of human history could not imagine. If that plane lands and never takes off again, where will you be stuck? And who will you miss? Do you have a passport? It doesn't matter if there are no flights to take you to the border. The world is only as big as the speed of your fastest transport, and your world just got very small. Tell me in the comments, if you could never fly again, where is the one place you would regret never seeing? I'll see you in the comments, assuming you can get there by train.